Good evening and welcome to Public Eye. 16 is a symbolic age, the year celebrated in endless songs from Chuck Berry to Neil Sedaka, when girls become women and boys become men. When you cross that threshold, the law says that you can have sex, unless you belong to that 5% of the population that is gay. If you're 16, male and homosexual, you can face 2 years behind bars, because the age of consent for that category is still 21. To the gay community, this discrepancy remains clear legal proof of continuing discrimination. On the face of it, the Conservative backbenches may seem an unlikely place to find sympathy, but familiar faces like Edwina Curry are now raising their voices in support. She believes that our law is out of date and should be brought into line with that of the majority of our EC partners who have the same age of consent for heterosexuals and gay men. Mrs. Curry had that view put to the test when Public Eye took her to Amsterdam to see how liberalisation worked out in practice. And even the Prime Minister himself is believed to be supportive of change following his meeting last autumn with actor and gay rights campaigner Sir Ian McKellen. John Nicholson now investigates a question of consent.
To be homosexual is a thing which I've never actually sought, I've never sort of wanted. I mean, it's just so plain to my conscience and my heart, it's wrong.
Yeah.
So that's why I seek to be free from it.
Joseph's gay and can't come to terms with it. He's come to get therapy from a man who claims that homosexuals can be cured.
Because of the deficit within one's life, of the masculinity, it has a tendency to turn us very negative, very, very negative. It's only when we discover various truths through counselling that negativeness changes to positiveness, and it helps us to put our shoulders back and realise, yes, we are a complete man, created by God.
Such views helped shape Britain's sex laws, homosexuality condemned as morally and socially wrong.
I'm 30 now, and basically my life from about age 11 or 12, when I first became aware of this tendency to be drawn towards blokes in this way, has been absolute hell on earth.
Everybody's free to feel good. Everybody's free to feel good.
8 o'clock on a hot Saturday evening at the Village Bar in Soho, London. Few people here appear tortured by their homosexuality. If British law was designed to act as a deterrent, it doesn't seem to be conspicuously successful these days. The truth is that the gay scene's thriving as never before, not just here, but in other big cities throughout the UK. Clubs and bars like this one are full of young gay men who are open about their sexuality and happily enjoying a night out in the town with friends. But for those men aged between 18 and 21, there's a catch. Unlike heterosexuals the same age, while they might be old enough to come in here and buy a drink, if they're enjoying any kind of sexual relationship with their partner, they're breaking the law. Colin and Terry are boyfriends, and they're sleeping together, breaking the law because Terry is 19. If the police decided to act, Terry could be imprisoned for 2 years, Colin for 5.
I'm petrified because of the law, because the way that they can enforce it, which should be completely disastrous for me and for himself, because he's got to go about the rest of his life knowing that he has put me to jail for something that he already does anyway, and will most likely carry on for the rest of his life.
If anything happened and things started, like if I was sent to jail, for example, then it would definitely break up my family. And that's always on my mind in part. I try not to worry about it, but I think that when you're faced with that sort of danger, you have to worry about it.
As a minor, the law considers Terry too emotionally immature to know what he's doing and in need of protection from older gay men. Men like Colin.
He is gay. I am gay. I didn't lead him astray because he was gay before he met me. He just needed someone to be with.
But in the eyes of the law, you're a minor, so it could be argued that he's being exploitative.
Well, I know my mind. I just think it's ridiculous that this law can say such a thing.
Michael Cashman, the actor and gay activist, agrees. The very basis of the age of consent laws, the notion that homosexuality is something that people require protection from, he considers to be both outdated and offensive.
To suggest that you have to protect people from homosexuality is to suggest that there is something evil about homosexuality. There is absolutely nothing evil about sexuality. If somebody wishes to go through it as a phase, and I don't think you do go through it as a phase, then it is a perfectly valid phase. You cannot be perverted from your sexuality. Nothing's converted me to heterosexuality in my 41 years, and I think 10% of the population have got a cat in hell's chance of trying to convert 90% of the population. It's utter and complete bunkum.
No one would argue that a huge number of arrests are made each year for underage sex. Any change in the age of consent would be a matter of symbolic importance for gay men. But last year, over 1,000 arrests were made for other forms of sex crime. A gay man can be arrested for importuning. That is asking another man to go to bed with him, even if it's clear that the other man wants to. And gross indecency, actually getting caught having sex or making love in a place defined as public, can lead to a prison sentence. Gay men argue that they're discriminated against by laws specifically targeted against homosexuals. Some complain not just of legally enshrined discrimination, but of the lengths to which the police will go in order to bring prosecutions. Gordon's known he was gay since the age of 11. Now 34, he's still not open about it. He doesn't think of Yorkshire as gay user-friendly. He's not in a relationship, and when he wants sex, he goes to a cottage, a public lavatory used by some men either to have sex or, in Gordon's case, to pick men up to go and have sex elsewhere. But one day, things went badly wrong.
I was arrested for importuning.
What does that mean?
It's actually trying to pick a man up. The only unfortunate thing is it just happened to be a policeman that I tried picking up at the time. A plainclothes policeman, very, very good looking. The other officer that was involved as well was very, very good looking. I mean, there were people that you would normally associate with getting picked up by other men.
So they look gay?
They look very gay, right down to the dress, everything. It was very typical of what you would expect. Very, very tight-fitting jeans. Probably a couple of buttons on the fly left undone, that type of thing.
So what did you do and what did they do?
Well, he stood very close, I mean, not directly next to me. And there was a lot of, so-called movement around as though he was actually playing with himself and looking across and looking over to see if I was doing anything. And looking you up and down, that type of thing. And I just walked up to one of them on the way out, just said, hi, have you got somewhere to go? And they said, yeah, we've got a nice warm cell for you to go to. Which, the world opened up and I was, swallowed in this pit.
The use of so-called pretty policemen to ensnare people is denied by the police, but they accept that they do carry out surveillance operations. This lavatory at Bloxwich in the West Midlands, for instance, has been watched since Christmas, much to one local solicitor's disgust.
They have officers inside the building, hiding in an incredible range of places. Broom cupboards is one. What most people don't know is that in almost every public lavatory there is a place where the public servant who keeps the place clean and tidy keeps their brooms and other things, and they have holes drilled in doors, for example, for the sole purpose of enabling policemen to keep observation. And officers, sometimes in very physically uncomfortable, cramped conditions, stay there for quite long spells, sometimes standing on on ladders and all sorts of things. So they are, in effect, spying.
They're not just trying to stop people having sex. They also seem to be out to catch men who are looking for partners to go off and have sex elsewhere. But local police say that they're just responding to public complaints.
It would depend very much on what sort of pressure was put on him by the local population and community groups to take police action to deal with the problem. I can't see a police commander using resources to deal with a problem that he perceived may upset local people without local people actually telling him it was their problem.
I wouldn't begin to justify homosexual men contacting or trying to contact people who didn't want to know. But the reality is that they don't do it because there are ways they can signal to one another. The police know that's how they get their cases. And I have never heard of a single case in over 30 years' practice in this town where there has been a person complained to the police and the police were able to call him as a witness. Not once.
So at Bloxwich, had the police merely responded to complaints, or were they acting on their own initiative?
I do understand that it is a problem because it's been advertised as a cottage in gay literature that's circulated around the country.
How do you know that?
I was informed of that fact by the local commander.
But reading the gay press smacks of looking for problems.
Well, it depends how this particular publication came into police hands. I don't think we actually trawl the gay press on a regular basis to find out where problems are likely to be.
That the public at large are harassed by gay men on the prowl is central to the police case. So adopting the guise, if not the techniques, of pretty policemen ourselves, we went to check out a lavatory in the north of England, advertised in the gay press as a cottage. Conventional lavatory users seemed to be coming and going quite unmolested, but a number of people didn't appear to be going anywhere. And quite a lot of staring was going on. Pretty unsubtle staring at that. The young man now leaving had glanced more than a few times in my direction, and I suspected it wasn't because he was lusting after my hidden camera. He also seemed to be waiting for me at the top of the stairs. Clearly I was being given a choice, to follow or not. It turned out that he was a university student in his early 20s. When we started talking, he accepted quite freely that he had been flirting. He argued that he had every right to do so.
Are you aware of what you were doing in there that was illegal?
Yes.
How are you breaking the law?
Loitering, basically, in a public lavatory, which the law says you shouldn't do, and you can be punished for it. It's a criminal offence.
Can you explain what the thrill of cottaging is?
I suppose it's a risk that's involved of actually going there. It's the adrenaline going, I suppose. That adds to the fun. I don't see that anyone has any right to say you shouldn't do it.
Summertime, 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 and the living is...
But in some other parts of the UK, gay men flirting with or picking up other men don't have to worry quite as much. Not that the law is any different, just that in practice, police forces interpret the law differently. Take London, for instance. There the gay scene is perhaps at its most public on Hampstead Heath. The place is full of gay men. Some come to sit and talk, while others, like these men, are using the park for pickups. Whether they're dealing with men cruising during the day or having sex on the heath at night, the Hampstead police, unlike their colleagues in the West Midlands, strike an attitude which is positively liberal.
The practical approach we take is that at night we do not go looking for gay men having sex on the heath. Nocturnal activity is not something that we go looking for. We do not routinely patrol the heath at night.
In other words, you allow gay men to have sex on the heath at night if they want to?
We don't allow it. We're not indifferent to the issue. It remains unlawful behaviour, but we do not choose to patrol the heath at night because among competing priorities, issues such as burglary, issues such as street robbery, we are not moved to expend resources on the heath at night.
Gay men think that the law is harsh and unfair. They believe it should treat homosexuals and heterosexuals the same.
Parliament is responsible for upholding the rights and the freedoms of the individual. In our society, it demands that its lesbian and gay citizens pay exactly the same adherence to the rules and the regulations of society. Yet, in our case, it chooses to undermine our civil liberties, undermine our human rights by legislating against us in our sexuality.
Edwina Currie, the Conservative MP, agrees. She wants to see British law change. She's highly critical these days of government policies towards homosexuals. And Public Eye invited her to go to Amsterdam to assess how the more liberal laws in the Netherlands seem to be working.
I think our legislation now is a little out of date, and perhaps the time's come to look at it again. For example, a girl of 16 can marry, she can do all sorts of things, but a boy who wants to get involved in a homosexual relationship, he can't choose who he sleeps with. He can join the army and he can die for his country, but he can't make choice about his personal life, and I think that's now out of date.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that make me. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex.
The question was, how would Mrs. Currie, liberal in theory, stand up to equality in practice? Those who oppose changing the law in Britain, after all, tend to portray the Netherlands as a permissive society run right, an example which should be avoided at all costs. But Dutch gay activists are unapologetic about what their critics see as excesses.
Some would say that you, as the leader of gay Europe, do the rest of the gay community, especially in Britain, a big disservice by how far you've gone.
I don't think they are right in that. Accepting that people have fun. What's wrong in that? Accepting that people make love. What's wrong in that? That's why I live for it, to have a good life, to let people free, to let people live their own lives.
What do you think about Amsterdam, what you've seen of it so far? We've been wandering around. It's a city that many people in Britain, especially people in your own party, would think has gone way overboard.
I don't see that Holland as a country, the Netherlands as a country, is disintegrated because homosexuality has been legal here for nearly 200 years. They seem to me an eminently respectable nation, and one to whom other nations turn with respect.
Mark and Martin share a flat in Amsterdam. They'd be breaking the law in the UK because Mark is 20. But there's a tradition of tolerance in the Netherlands. The age of consent has been the same for homosexuals and heterosexuals for more than 20 years. So young gay couples can live together with society's blessing.
How do the family react? How do your parents react to you living with Martin?
They love Martin. So when my parents met him, they accepted him as my boyfriend. Just like my sister came home with a boyfriend. Exactly the same. They're very glad I've got a boyfriend.
And were you able to go to teachers at high school and
yes,
say to them?
I went to a teacher who was also homosexual. And we've talked many hours about it. And it was quite a relief.
How did you know he was homosexual?
Because he's open for it.
So as a young homosexual at school, you were able to go to a teacher who was also homosexual and ask for advice?
Yes.
In the way that a heterosexual boy could do?
Yeah.
Can you imagine what it would be like for your position to be illegal, for you not to be able to have any sexual experience with another man at all until you're 21 without breaking the law? What effect do you think that would have on you?
I can't imagine it. Because it's only love we've got. And I guess if I can't practice that love, our love, I'd rather die.
What goes on here? Tolerance permeates Dutch society. This, for instance, is a protected area where men pick one another up under the benevolent gaze of Director De Blij of the Hague Police Force and his officers. Homosexuals aren't doing anything to break the law in Holland, so for the police they're not criminals, but members of a respected social minority. The police guard against gay bashers, but keep a discreet distance to avoid disturbing any recently acquainted young lovers. Policemen here use gay papers to place recruitment ads.
We advertise in the Gay Journal since 1989, and it's very successful. We have a lot of homosexuals in our force at this moment.
And not just amongst new recruits or even patrolmen. Some gay men have risen to the highest ranks in the force. Now, you're a director in the Hague Police Force. That's the equivalent of an assistant chief constable in our police forces. And you're also a gay man. What's it like to be a gay policeman?
Oh, it's not a problem at all. Everybody in my force knows that I am gay. And for instance, if there are parties from the chief constable or the burgomaster of The Hague, I go there with my friend. It's not a problem.
Your partner?
My partner.
Meanwhile, Edwina had gone for a boogie in what she claimed was her first gay disco. At Exit, one of Amsterdam's top clubs, there's drinking, raving, all the usual things you'd expect. Except here they also have an upstairs darkroom where men can go and have sex.
It's offering your clients something, because there is a certain amount of people who can't have sex at their homes. Here you can warn people, you can tell people about condoms, about safe sex and all those things.
Sign saying keep it safe on the stairs. I mean, are you happy about that? Are you happy it's inside, it's being kept relatively safe and it's in a nice atmosphere?
Oh, you face me with things I've never been faced with before. I would much rather people be safe than dead.
Edwina, from your point of view, what's wrong with the darkroom? What do you object to?
Well, I think people should have sex in private. I don't think that's something that people should be doing with the least opportunity of someone interfering with them or interrupting them or seeing what they're up to.
Yeah, a lot of people find that very exciting, so I agree with you. I would never do it in a place like that, because that's my personal opinion on sex. But I don't deny other people the right to do that if they want to.
People upstairs want to be interfered with. That's the whole point of the room, isn't it?
Well, I don't think I want to see it in Derby.
Maybe not. But while finding some things to blanch at in the Netherlands, Mrs. Curry still believed it had much to teach Britain. You're going back home to fight for change in the law in Parliament. What are you going to be calling for?
Well, the Dutch changed the law on consent 21 years ago. I'm quite happy to be about 20 years behind Holland. I think they got it about right then. I'm not sure I go as far as they're going now. We have a long way to go.
So has Mrs. Curry any chance of persuading her parliamentary colleagues? Well, perhaps. Some in the gay lobby believe that there are some encouraging signs. Unaccustomed signals of goodwill seem to be emanating from number 10 Downing Street, for instance. The Prime Minister held his high-profile meeting with the gay activist Sir Ian McKellen in the run-up to the election. And more recently, he sent a letter of encouragement to Torch, the Tory campaign for homosexual equality. And at Westminster itself, there are signs of movement. The Home Affairs Select Committee seem likely to look this Parliament at the way that gay people are treated under the law.
Only since the latter part of the 19th century has this kind of hypocritical humbug become part of our lawmaking process, and we have invented grotesquely unfair laws that render great injustice to families and individuals, cause immense hardship, sometimes suicides too, and we interfere in the private lives of people in a way which is no longer sustainable towards the end of this century.
Are you embarrassed at the fact that Britain is lags so far behind other European countries when it comes to this?
Yes, I am embarrassed. I do think we have to address this issue in the course of this Parliament for this and other reasons. and to leave it in abeyance will lead inevitably to a challenge before the European Court of Human Rights, and I think that would be well justified.
But Liberal Tories won't have it all their own way. Walter Sweeney, MP for the Vale of Glamorgan, argues that he, rather than Edwina Currie or John Wheeler, reflects most accurately Tory backbenchers' views.
Certainly so far as homosexuality is concerned, we're dealing with a form of deviance, something which is a bad thing in society, which does encourage the spread of disease and which does cause the risk of physical injury to the men concerned.
Don't you think in your heart of hearts that there's really something rather distasteful about parliamentarians interfering in matters of private morality in this way?
No, I don't think so. There are lots of areas in which morality overlaps with the criminal law, and I think that Parliament must take responsibility to legislate where it feels that's necessary in order to protect society.
You're going to face big problems though, aren't you? Because your views are much more liberal than those of some people in the Conservative backbenches.
Well, it is ever thus that in all parties you get people with differing views. The question really is this, that do you catch the tide for change? I believe that tide is now with us.
Ultimately, of course, politicians are influenced by public opinion, and they're reluctant to defy it. But on this issue, the electorate's not sending a straightforward message. Asked in a recent British social attitude survey whether homosexuality is often or always wrong, 69% said yes, it is. However, another recent poll, this time for Harris, asking whether homosexuals should be treated equally under the law, found that 71% of the public believed that they should. The message seems to be that people don't approve of homosexuality, but disapprove of discrimination even more.
I don't know if society is becoming more favourable towards the rights of gay people. However, the more gay and lesbian people that come out and openly declare themselves, that get involved in the debate, means that the issue of lesbian and gay equality has to be taken on board. If we remain quiet, if we remain invisible, nothing will ever get done. So whether society wishes to take it on board or not is neither here nor there. In a democratic society, we have to make sure that it does take these inequalities on board and sets them right.
The days when the homosexual community was invisible have long since gone. Increasingly open and confident, British gay men are making their voices heard. They know that equality Dutch style is still a long way off, but they believe that the sex laws, in particular the current age of consent, are now under threat. The question of justice for gay men, it seems, can no longer be kept off the parliamentary agenda.
John Nicholson investigating the vexed question of consent, the issue on which the gay community hopes this Parliament will legislate. Next week, a question of selection in education.